Hi everyone, I'm going to do a quick journal page before I get on with the folio that I've been promising you. The video is nearly completed. And I want to show my processes about how I go about creating something. Now I like these two photos and I've decided to insert those into a page today. When I'm creating a page, it's very much about how it makes me feel. So I'm going to be using paint, but I don't want to paint a background in there that is exactly like these. I can just go and take a photo for that. I want, when somebody looks at these pages, to get a sense of what I'm feeling when I look at them. And that's where it comes down to interpreting a photo. Where this might look very tranquil to one person, or perhaps this is a better example, this might look tranquil to one person, it could look quite sinister to another. So what we're doing is creating a feeling on the page. I'm going to be using brayering techniques, and I'm going to be using the distress paints. The reason why I'm using these distress paints is because they're very flat on the page. I am going to bring in texture with my modelling cream. In this case I'm using a flexible Liquitex modelling paste that I will colour up later. I haven't done this before, it's just plain. I'm also going to stamp, and that's the other reason why I want the paint to be quite flat on my page. So I'm not really, I might put a little bit of gesso back there, maybe not. Gesso will give you a wonderful reflect on your paint, so you're getting a true colour, but as I'm combining them up and using my brayer to create my background, it mightn't be necessary. So I'm going to do a little collage on them, because these are photographs that were taken by Jason. And so instead of trying to fit another photo in there, because these are quite big, and I have brought the colour up of them quite high, so this isn't, I've increased the intensity of the colour on it, because I was considering putting tissue over them, but changed my mind. So I want to be able to put him in there to say that he took these photos, and another little photographer in our family, his fiance. So we're going to put them into the photos, and I'm going to do that so that I don't spoil the structure of it by just inserting them over top of these. When I'm considering which colours I'll use, because this is quite blue down the bottom, you'll see me eventually work blues down the bottom of the page, and greens and browns up around the top, and probably on the side more browns down the base. I just consider where I'm going to put them, and it's not exact, but it's just a bit of fun. And I always start off with my light colours. If you prefer to sponge these colours on, do that. But at the moment we're just getting a bit of paint on there, a bit of texture on there, and by the looks of things a little muck on there that I'm getting off other things, but that doesn't matter. If you had put gesso over this surface, you would find that you would use a lot less paint because it won't absorb in. But with this particular technique at this stage, you don't want to have all the texture like you've seen me put on other pages. What we're doing is just creating colour back there. Whenever you bray, you always want to do it in lines. If you start doing crazy things like going across the page, you get all these weird streaks. I get to shake them like I always do. It might look like I'm using a lot of paint, but it actually isn't. Another thing you can do is use your gesso as like a whitener in there. If you want some lighter colours. To get into these centered places, you can just use one of your sponges off your ink blending tool, or sometimes I do the whole page using this type of, using a sponge, or you can use some cut and dry or to get your paint down into the gaps so you don't have any weird white marks coming through. If you were using an acrylic paint that has got because acrylic paints do dry very quickly, Tim's distress paints are a little slower because they're more liquid. So if you're using up some of your acrylic paints, make sure you put some chlorine helmet extra time and mix it in with your paint so that you have got some work time. Otherwise the stuff will be drying before you get a chance to do anything on it. And I'm all about the layering, so there's always going to be lots of layering. You can also spread your paint around with a palette knife, especially if it's a thicker paint. That's always a lot of fun. Now this is going to change, but if you come down on this page just even with this amount of layer on, you can see how you can get some interesting texture and colour coming through, but the surface is actually flat. It's just through the layers of paint and brayering them on. And don't waste any of your paint. When it gets to this stage, you start doing things like this where you're actually brayering it down and then come over the top and put those colours through. So you don't waste anything. It all just adds to texture on the page. Now I've got a layer down there. Now I can think about the colours I'm going to bring over the top. I want to have this one on this side, and you can see I've started to get green, yellow coming in, but this one's got a bit more brown, warmer tone, so I want to bring a little bit of that down here, and a bit of a darker colour up that side, and the blue down here. Now this isn't going to be joining up or doing any of those things. It's merely just to create this background to make it interesting. This is a super tip that I can give you, and this has helped me through lots of crafting, building up lots of canvases, doing scrapbook pages, doing cards, doing mixed media work. If you look at your work, no matter what project you're doing, and you can't see the wood for the trees, perhaps you've been working on it for a long time, perhaps you've overworked it and you can't see what you're creating, or perhaps you just think it looks like a hot mess. The thing to do, it never fails. You can always get it back. You take it and you open your book or hold up your card or hold up your canvas in front of a mirror. And then when you look at it, it will appear to be a whole, like somebody else has made it. And then your eyes will be able to pick out where you've gone wrong. Where the composition of your project's gone wrong. You'll be able to see what you've done. It might be just that you've put too much on there. It might be that the whole project's unbalanced, but by reflecting it in a mirror, you get to look at it with fresh eyes like somebody else has created it, and it always helps. Reasonably dry. Now when I want to bring in a few extra colours, all I'll use is my dabber to do it. The dabber top to do it, so that you're not using up so much paint. And I know I want a little bit of a light area through here, so I'll just dab it on and roll it out. Too much on, dampen one of your little sponges and take some of it away. Yeah. Drag it back to how you like it. This is just one layer. We're going to be stamping over the top of all this. We have to use archival ink now, putting your lightest colours on first, and then your darker colours so you don't contaminate your pads too much. I contaminate my pads quite. Now this is a square stamp, and we don't want all the square lines on there, so we're going to put it down because I want good stamping. I've kind of put pencil marks kind of where the picture's going to go, but then I'm going to bring texture paste over it anyway, so I better get this up the right way. And we'll put it on, put it down, and we're not worried. This is actually a very exact stamp, but I'm making it a smudgy effect, and I just want to take out those straight edge lines, so I'm actually going to just do that with this bit of a sponge. I don't want square lines in my work. Now I love stamps that are off their blocks because I can kind of push them into areas, rock them around. This stamp, when you stamp it correctly, as you can see, is very detailed, and you actually see the layers because some of the background stamping has got like a pin dot effect, so you get, especially when you do it in dark colours, you get this 3D effect. But I'm kind of just using it as an addition, a collage-y look here. There are no rules here, so if you happen to want to stamp all this precisely, it's a very simple process. All you do is, I'm lazy, but you just tear yourself out a piece of paper towel, scatter up these edges by tearing it and putting it down, and then just stamp over it so you get rid of all your straight lines. But I'm a little lazy. I decided to bring in a few more positive images over the top using the same stamp and a few colours. I'm not going to heat set it yet, because when I finish putting these images over, because this is archival is oil basting, I'm going to put some embossing powder over the top. And the reason why I'm not drying it now is because if I put the embossing powder over it now and then try to stamp over it, I mightn't get the images that I want, because it will hold up on those bumps and lumps of the embossing powder. I'm putting embossing powder over this, and I'm using what I call my dirty embossing powder jar, because I keep quantity of it when I want to set a layer in between my journaling, which is what I'm doing now. When you're doing a large image like this and you're wanting to emboss it, one, be aware that where in your book it is, because if you've got embossing powder on the page underneath, it will reactivate it and it will make it stick together. And two, I see a lot of people waggling all over the place, especially in the classes, when they've left with a lot of embossing powder on their pages that's just wiped off. So what you do is you heat your tool, hold it on there, as you see it change, then you move it. You can actually get quite close, but you just move it along as it changes. We've got that done. It's getting a bit late at night and my lighting in here isn't great, but we'll continue for a bit. It's still, now that I've put that layer of embossing powder over the top, you can see some detail is starting to come out. But you still haven't lost the opportunity of getting colour in there where you want to put it. And this is the time that you perhaps want to go and hold it up in front of a mirror to see where it needs it. I don't get too worried about things like that, because I think it'll always come out in the wash. But I've got archival here, because now that we've got that embossing powder on, this is the only thing that will go over top of it, other than to block it out completely with paint. And you'll always start with your light colours first to see how they register. And I just want to see if I can get a bit of yellow in here. It'll go in places. This is kind of a, not really yellow, it's kind of a different colour. I'm just going to rub it over. I want a little bit more colour coming through. You can see a bit of light coming through on this side. Okay, inserting pictures into a background that you've made, there are so many different methods. Some people like to put them in, edge them and frame them and just have them in there and do what they're going to do. You can randomly, this is another one of these photos, you can randomly cut out the edges of it, ink them up, shade them in, and put them into your work like so to give you this type of effect. You can use your stamp, as you've seen me do on other videos, and actually stamp them in by using the same images that I use in the background to stamp in over the top to place them into the work. Or you can use your texture pastes to put paste all around the edge, and then with the right texture paste you can actually stamp into it and again put this image or other images around it. You can use your stencils, where you get a stencil, might be in, this is a word stencil, and you can use it to run words. So if you had a square image in there, to run words after you've cleaned up the edges, to run words and putting texture through, to run words down actually onto, using texture paste down onto the photo that you've selected, the picture you've selected, in different areas, and just onto it here and there, and that will insert it into the page that you're creating. You don't have to use words, you can do all sorts of things like this, where you'd perhaps put a big sunburst up there and flip it around and do something down here. There are just so many ways to insert these into your pages, whether you're scrapbooking or whether you're making cards. And those are just a few. I'm not sure which one I'm going to do yet. I might try some texture paste and stamp into it. I'll make up my mind in the morning when the light's a bit better. I've used my mixture of Vero Metal Effect colour, and these are colours I've used: golden green, copper and gold, to create these effects back here. They won't be really visible yet. In fact, you probably won't see them until I move the page, because I'll blend in somewhat with the background. But we'll do something to make them stand out again soon. And I've put them over. And when you put this metal effects over, it can be quite harsh in places, especially if you watched me slap it down. You'll see that it was, I just literally did put it on, and I've got it in places like this where I haven't noticed, but I haven't worried about that. It just all blends in with the photo, the picture. But you need to sand off the tops of it if you've got sharp bits, because obviously you don't want sharp bits damaging photos and other bits on your work. I've avoided that by placement, so that when I close my book it won't interfere with my photos. But if you're not going to do that, just make sure that you get a snow block and you sand the tops of it. It's quite easy to do, and it'll just all come off and you'll have no sharp bits. And you can sand it back as much as you like. I plan to bring out some more of the details on these using real feathers. I know some people aren't a fan of real feathers, but I am. And I'm going to do that by, here's some of the feathers. Now the feathers, bring it close up into here. Feathers are quite attractive by themselves, but I don't want feathers all through my book. So I'm actually going to treat them with glossy accents. And I'm probably only just use the tips of them to enhance my page in the places like, I won't do it all over, but just in places where I'll just use the top of it to perhaps go in the centre of these pieces to make them look cool, or cool to me. What I'm creating here is very much a page with a New Zealand feel to it. It has images from here, it just has a feeling of here, of our bush, and a quality to it that reminds me very much of some of the things that mean New Zealand and home to me. So to do the feathers, all you do is, I mean, you could use that like so and just stick it to your work, but I want it to be a little tougher than that. Grab yourself a brush, you put a little bit of glossy accents on your brush, and if you've ever used feathers before, they'll split unless you're very careful. Well, I'm actually not worried about them splitting, so I just plonk it on there. You can even do right down if you so wish, because what you do is once you've got your glossy accents on, you just drag it together and then leave it to dry on your on your non-stick craft mat, and it'll be quite tough and robust, so that when you stick that down it'll look good and it'll be fun in your collage. Before I put my feathers on top of some of these, I'm just going to enhance these. Now you could do it a couple of ways. You could make yourself a paint wash, which is just a mixture of glaze or water and paint, and swish it across it so that they highlight and darken. But I've decided this time just to use some of my Ferrometal effects in there, and I'm going to use olive to make these just a little bit more ferny, and I'll probably bring a highlighting colour over as well. Perhaps the copper, maybe the bronze, or the cinnamon. I haven't really decided that, but let's just see how this looks for a start. And I'll probably bring a couple of the colours through on here just to give this a little bit more pizzazz. The colours that would look great would probably be the pearl blue and the turquoise into the water, and let's see what happens with that. Bring a little bit of the cinnamon over the top in the same precious colour. Then I'm probably going to do a little bit of, if it ever gets a bit much for you, you can just put a bit of water on your brush and just blend it in together. It blends quite well. And just play around until you get it how you like it. But I'm literally just putting it to give it a few highlights. And don't be like me, paint all down the bottom. You should really start at the top of your page and come down, because if you're like me, you'll drag your hands in it and then you'll get it all over your photo and you'll have to fix that. The beauty of doing all this is, if you don't like it when you get finished, or even if you do like it but you want it to be a bit more muted because you've got too much, you just get your snow block again and sand some of it back, and you'll get some really cool effects. If you haven't got precious metal colours, any of your rubs, because the Viva Metal Effects paste is very porous, you could easily use some of your Viva Decor rub on it, because that's also water soluble wax, and you could mix up a bit or just rub it on with your finger. Okay, when you've reached something you like, you can just go around the page, and if you see a place where you think you don't like what you see, you just give it a little bit of a sand over dull it down a bit if it's a bit bright. There's lots of things you can do with these pages. You can bring in, this is Timperley stamp, one of his stamps. Put in birds' eggs, put in nests, do whatever suggests something to you. You can bring in leaves if you so wish and arrange them around because they'll look cool on there, especially if you glossy accent them or texture them up. There's just a ton of things that you could do on a page like this. All I'm going to do is I think I'll bring those feathers in. I'll give it a nice frame because I like to give my works, make it look like it's in a frame. I'll just use a bit of black archival to go around the edge or maybe a bit of paint. And I'm going to see how the feathers look on it and place them down, and I'm just going to glue them down. You don't need to watch me do every bit of that, but I'm just going to cut them how I want them and see how they look when I glue them on this particular Fancy Feathers stencil that I've used to put that down. And I might come over the top with a little bit of detail like this. See what it looks like. If it doesn't look good, you have to be careful when you're doing this, just to give these a little bit more structure. You be very careful when you do this. I mean, it's okay for me to muck up my work, but you might want to do it with a sponge. And just give those a little darkening on the edges so you can see them a little bit more. Like so. To bring them more into the pictures. So I'll do a little bit of that. Go around the edges like this. Give my picture a frame. Let it dry off. And glue those down. I'll probably put a New Zealand up here because this is very much home New Zealand feeling pages. So I'll do that and I'll have pictures at the end. And thank you very much for watching. The next one is the folio and it's nearly finished.